You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast, and on this episode, we continue our conversation about horror remakes and how they can be mirrors, reflection of societal and cultural concerns. It sounds heady, but we're talking John Carpenter. Here we go. You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez, with you as always, fellow co-host Pete Charbonneau. And Pete, in part one of our conversation, using this great article that was released on the Nerdist website, these horror remakes are vital social political mirrors of their time. And it was written by Ariel Fisher. And you can read more about Ariel at her website, arielfisher.com. And this article just struck a chord with me because it listed various horror remakes that you and I have certainly seen and put them in the framework of how the remakes were basically mirrors of what was going on at the time. So in the first part of our conversation, we discussed the first movie Ariel mentioned in her article, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1978 remake of the 1956 original, and how the original movie had themes of Cold War paranoia, the idea of loss of individuality, the pod people, assimilation, suburban conformity. You had the anti-communist propaganda, the McCarthy-era witch hunts, Kevin McCarthy literally looking down the barrel of the camera at the audience saying, "You're next." And then we transition to the 1978 remake where the story endured. People are being replaced, but now the movie is adapting to 1978 social anxieties, distrust of the government. You have post-Vietnam cynicism. You have the feminist movement, because the movie was released at a time when the Equal Rights Amendment was being debated, that was really highlighting women's vulnerability in American society. This was all post-Watergate. What on face value, sounds like a lot of heady stuff. Paranoia, control, loss of identity. It's things that we certainly did not see in our first viewings of those movies.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I love the 78 version. I've really grown to love it even more in recent years, although it always intrigued me.
But as we've gotten older, it's hard to kind of ignore a lot of those themes in those movies. Now, to be fair, with a lot of remakes, and we kind of talked about this in our first part of the conversation, a lot of remakes tend to start with a bit of a head start because the audience has a sense of what's going on. So let's go to a modern day horror release in Stephen King's It that was released in 2017, and that was a remake of that original TV miniseries. So if you were young enough to not have seen that miniseries that we grew up with, you saw the 2017 version and you were introduced to Pennywise. But I think it's probably safe to say a lot of people that were probably watching that movie had a sense of who Pennywise was, either from Halloween costumes, from memes, from GIFs, just from seeing it somewhere. So they sat in that theater in 2017 watching the first chapter of the It remakes, already kind of knowing, oh yeah, this is the Scary Clown movie that's based on that other Scary Clown miniseries. You get a movie like George Romero's Night of the Living Dead that was released in 1968, a movie that I certainly hold in high regard. Jordan Peele would agree.
Night of the Living Dead, total game changer, right? We've got a black protagonist, and we've got a movie that is in itself an allegory for race and racial discussion, and it's mad early. I think Get Out came out probably like 50 years after Night of the Living Dead. My favorite thing about this movie is that it's about something important. It's about something poignant without being about it. All of a sudden, a bunch of dead bodies start rising from their graves and attack the country. They attack a house. And what you have is a black man and a white woman end up in a house, and you see this little microcosm for this racial dynamic where she's in shock, but you don't quite know where the shock of being attacked by zombies or the shock of being in this house with this black dude who just is all business drops off and picks up. And then, of course, one of the most crushing endings of all time that really just sort of left an impact. And, you know, for that movie alone, Romero just became an absolute horror icon. That movie really turned the idea of a zombie into like a household monster.
And then Night of the Living Dead was remade in 1990 by director Tom Savini, and that movie is more of a cult classic. Yes, it has some changes to it, but I think Siskel from Siskel and Ebert says it best.
Nothing special there. There are a few plot twists from the original, but the overall spirit of the movie is the same, leaving the obvious question, why was this film made? And aside from monetary reasons, I can't think of a single good reason. In fact, if this has been the picture made in '68, it wouldn't have been a cult film.
Wouldn't have liked it then. No, this movie is so close to the original that it doesn't bring anything new to the party.
Correct.
And if you're going to look at a movie called Night of the Living Dead, you might as well look at the first one. It's a lot better. So that's it.
Nothing more to say.
To stick to the world of horror remakes, you have the original, The Amityville Horror, that came out in 1979, a movie that was based on a home, true crime that happened in your original stomping grounds, Pete, over by Long Island. And that movie was remade in 2005, also called The Amityville Horror, that stars Ryan Reynolds. And I already gave Gene Siskel a little spotlight, so let's give Roger Ebert a little spotlight and his thoughts on the 2005 Amityville Horror remake.
We have thumbs up and thumbs down on this show, and now we introduce a new position, the wagging finger of shame, which is awarded to movies that the studios are too embarrassed to screen in advance for movie critics. The first wagging finger of shame winner is the Amityville Horror, which opens this weekend without benefit of reviews, maybe because the studio knows something about this movie that they don't want you to know.
Well, I got another finger I'd like to give it, but okay, I like your institution of this new category.
So going back to this article, in part one, again, we talked about Invasion of the Body Snatchers. And now as we continue this conversation, Pete, let's dig into, again, John Carpenter. Probably, again, no surprise to folks that are listening. We go to his 1982 movie, John Carpenter's The Thing, which was a remake of The Thing from Another World from 1951, which was adapted from the John Campbell story, the novella Who Goes There, that came out in 1938.
We need some help down here. Stop thinking the outbreaks. We found something.
John Carpenter's The Thing. Screenplay by Bill Lancaster. The Thing. The ultimate in alien terror. Rated R, under 17, not admitted without parent.
This is a movie that we actually got to see recently at the Amazing Theater in Carolina as part of their Splatterfix Fest. And again, talk about a movie that keeps on giving. I feel like every time I see The Thing, I get something more out of it. I appreciate this article's angle because, yes, the idea of paranoia and isolation, distrust, that's in the foreground of the movie. You don't have to go too far into the movie to know that that's what John Carpenter's kind of getting at. But again, context, 1982, it's Reagan, Cold War's heating back up again. You have assassination attempts, you have political violence, you have media distrust. John Carpenter is certainly aware of all of this. You get the retirement of Walter Cronkite, the quote unquote most trusted man in America. John Carpenter being a child of that era. And then on top of that, you get the first reports of AIDS. And I've heard, although I don't know if I necessarily would connect The Thing to the AIDS epidemic, but just that idea of a mysterious, likely untreatable disease that might be spreading, there's certainly connective tissue to that in John Carpenter's The Thing, and that level of paranoia in infection and fear of contamination.
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure Carpenter has said as much that it was not on his mind making this.
There's a very somber kind of inevitability to the film. As it begins, you're seeing a helicopter flying. They're chasing a dog. And already, it feels like the end of the world. And that's what this is. This is an apocalyptic movie. It doesn't come from bombs dropping. It comes from within. And it was a movie that's tone started and finished. And then basically it was almost there's nothing you can do because here it comes. And of course The Thing is a metaphor for whatever you want to say. It's disease, could be AIDS, could be whatever. It comes from within you. It's also basically the lack of trust that's in the world now. We see it all over. Countries, people. We don't trust each other anymore. We don't know who to trust. We're with somebody that we think maybe they're our loved ones and they may attack us. And that's what the thing is. It has a lot of truth in it, kind of dressed up as a monster.
I don't remember what year AIDS really got on the national conscious.
It was 1 year before, though, just 1 year before that, 1981, where the first report of AIDS appeared in the CDC's Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. And you have to think, we can say the word AIDS now, and there's a lot of weight to it because we've had time. But in 1981, and you're certainly not thinking about what it would eventually become, the stigma that it would create, alienation, everything that is kind of associated with AIDS that John Carpenter may not have done, like you said, on purpose. But when I hear stuff like that, I think of things like George Romero in Night of the Living Dead, where he talked in interviews about how, he really wasn't dealing with race relations and racism by casting a black man as the lead. He's like, he was just the best actor. But you have to think, we're all products of our time. That stuff just kind of leaks into your art. And that's probably no different than John Carpenter be like, well, I wasn't actively addressing the AIDS epidemic, but it's all easy to see now.
Specifically, the AIDS thing is tied mainly to the scene with the blood test. Put yourself in the shoes of someone who was in a community back then that was starting to feel the effects of HIV and the AIDS virus, where even when it reached public conscious, in 84, 85, there's so much misinformation because so little was known. So 81, 82, if by some incredibly unfortunate circumstance you are dealing with this, or your people that you love or people in your community are, no one knows what's happening other than people are getting really sick and dying. You see something like The Thing and it's all tying in and all these fears, and maybe you can't even, express them verbally, but they're all churning in there. And I liken it not in the same way, but just to draw a parallel of some sort to something that's more modern day is the early days of the COVID virus, where, again, we heard reports and, things were coming in and it's like this, we've never seen this before. This could be the most deadly pandemic of all time. And, when you're in early days of something and you don't know what's going on, you don't know if there's a cure, if there will be a cure, and people around you are getting sick and dying, that has to just be absolutely terrifying. And then to kind of see that manifested on screen in 81, doesn't matter if John Carpenter knew about AIDS or even was trying to tie it in on purpose. If you're seeing something there that's kind of resonating with what's going on in your life, in real life, it's way more terrifying than, a guy's chest heaving open and a giant set of teeth clamping down on a doctor. That's gross and gory, but you can laugh that off. The other shit that you can't laugh off.
The original film, The Thing from Another World, was made in 1951 and remains one of my favorite movies. It's a great science fiction horror film, and it's got some of the greatest early scare moments in science fiction movies of the 50s. And I was offered The Thing, to remake The Thing at Universal in 1981, and I thought long and hard about it because I didn't want to compete with the old film, which was greatly loved by myself and many fans. So over the years, people have asked me about The Thing because on its release, it was not particularly successful with audiences or fans. But years later, because of home video and so forth, it got to be known a little bit better. But my reaction, I was pretty stunned by it at the time because I made a really grueling, dark film, and I just don't think audiences in 1982 wanted to see that. They wanted to see E.T. And The Thing was the opposite of that.
If you don't know who's infected, then you don't know who to trust. The enemy within, but even worse, the enemy hiding behind familiar faces. I think, again, all just kind of visualized in John Carpenter's The Thing, like you said, the blood test, and also this group of people that they don't seem like they're the best of coworkers.
I'm going to hide this tape when I'm finished. If none of us make it, at least there'll be some kind of record. The storm's been hitting us hard now for 48 hours. We still have nothing to go on. One other thing. I think it rips through your clothes when it takes you over. Windows found some shredded long johns, but the name tag was missing. They could be anybody's. Nobody trusts anybody now. We're all very tired. Nobody trusts anybody now.
I mean, there's definitely friction between most of those men and Gary at the start before things go bad. So, like, that just, it gets, amplified and turned up to like 50 once the thing shows up.
And again, probably leads to why the film still resonates. Same thing, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, original, the 78 remake, The Thing. I've seen The Thing from Another World. I'm going to spot this one along with probably like another movie that we're going to talk about momentarily, where remakes rarely are better than the original. In this case, John Carpenter's The Thing, doing a lot more heavy lifting in a lot of ways. Acting, special effects, thematically, than 1951's The Thing from Another World. Both of them certainly being products of their time. And in some ways, that's what this article is kind of saying. It just happens The Thing is more of a mirror for the early 1980s.
Yeah. And I mean, at the end of the day, if Wilford Brimley can't keep his head in a situation like that, we're all fucked.
How you doing, old boy?
I don't know who to trust.
I know what you mean, Blair. Trust's a tough thing to come by these days.
But yeah, I agree. I rewatched The Thing from Another World not too long ago, maybe like a year or so, and I enjoyed it. It's such a different movie from Carpenter's remake, and there's definitely a lot of like the space, like, those 50s sci-fi movies of like, what else could be out there? And, what if it's not friendly? What if we get attacked by, a giant walking carrot? What's going to happen to us? That's playing on a very different level, and that's playing on an almost pure entertainment level, the original, than the remake really taps into the isolationism, some of the deeper fears a lot more readily than the original one does.
And to think, too, that we grew up being fans of E.T. and having E.T. on our thermoses and lunchboxes. We weren't aware of The Thing. It's certainly until more recently, as we've grown up, that we've embraced The Thing being the better 1982 alien movie. I'm sure Spielberg would disagree with us. Audiences obviously weren't ready for The Thing either, because they made E.T. a box office success. It took a long time before The Thing became The Thing. It was considered nihilistic, disgusting. If Carpenter talks about media disinformation in the Reagan era more bluntly in They Live, he's still talking about it in The Thing. And I think just that idea of misinformation and how trust is the first casualty of all of that.
You've directed so many incredible films: Halloween, The Fog, Christine, Escape from New York, Big Trouble in Little China, They Live. For me, the most important thing is you have directed possibly my favorite film. It's definitely my happy place, and it's The Thing.
I meant it to be your happy place.
It really is. I'm not joking. My kids know that if Dad needs to be cheered up, he's going to go watch The Thing.
Well, it's about the end of everything. It's about the end of civilization and humanity. And that cheers you up. I like this. I really do.
I don't actually know what it is about it, but I'm so I'm absorbed by that film like the monster absorbs its victim.
That's true.
Spoiler alert.
I see.
You see?
Well, if there was a creature like that,
yes,
came down here, we wouldn't have a chance. Not a chance.
Another movie they talk about in the article, which is The Fly, based on the 1958 creature feature The Fly that was directed by Kurt Newman, written by James Clavell. The Fly, 1986, directed by David Cronenberg.
When a brilliant invention goes horribly wrong.
You're changing, Seth. Everything about you is changing.
All she can do is watch.
Don't go back to him.
I have to go back to him.
As he becomes the Fly.
Help me. Please help me.
Rated R. starts tomorrow at theaters everywhere.
You got Goldblum, you've got Gina Davis, 1980s pseudoscience, technology, body horror at a time when, again, mid-80s, we were talking about the AIDS epidemic, fear of infection, abortion rights, and those were certainly embattled. Roe versus Wade was under constant attack in the U.S. And while I can't say I'm the biggest fan of David Cronenberg, but I certainly remember as a kid watching The Fly on the Fox affiliate and loving that movie and not seeing any of the abortion rights, anxieties about nature and technology in that movie at all. But it's in the article and I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that stuff now. Those are all like real world tensions at that time and still today.
Just the abortion angle is like very viscerally depicted in The Fly too. So yeah, it was an eye opener for me. I'm like you. I mean, there's some fears that hit a little too close to home. You know, the body horror stuff, I can get behind some of it. Some of it just kind of like, the fear of what happens when your body starts to fail you. And it's like, I'm like, I don't like even thinking about that. So to see that get depicted on screen is just kind of like, yeah, boy.
Artifacts of a bygone era, of historical interest only.
And I remember seeing the remake of The Fly in the theater, and I'm trying to remember if it was something I wanted to do for my birthday, or it might have been a friend wanted to go see it for their birthday. My mom took me and one or two friends to see it and like talk about, again, just like an odd grouping of people to go see The Fly in a movie, you know, and this is 86. So 14, we were to see this rated R movie, but I don't think my mom knew what to expect from a David Cronenberg film. So I think nominally you can say that this and the original, the hubris of science, of thinking that you can control science and kind of bend it to your whims, and how that comes back to bite you in the ass is readily apparent. But for sure, I mean, this might be a little more overt on the AIDS comparisons than The Thing was. The decaying of the body, especially after you get that fault, like, or at least Goldblum does, and you get that brief surge when he, you know, kind of first is assimilated with the Fly, where he's got like the superhuman strength and he's the most virile man on the planet, and like he's feeling great and isn't this amazing, and you know, it doesn't last very long, but then next thing you know, his teeth are falling out, his ears falling off. This is all stuff that just, you know, anyone that's had to care for someone that is been ravaged by any number of diseases, from cancer to AIDS, whatever it is, like to see a loved one kind of deteriorate before your eyes is just what an emotional gut punch, and to kind of see that again depicted in a film maybe softens the blow a little bit because you can fall back on the entertainment value of it. But again, because I'm a male, the abortion side of things with the remake would not have resonated with me other than that one scene when Gina Davis has that dream, which you're not sure if it's a dream at first, of like the larva coming out of her because she's found out that she's pregnant with Jeff Goldblum's child after he's already been assimilated with the Fly. And so all of a sudden that brings up incredible fears as a mother.
That's it. Come on.
No, wait. No.
You can do it.
Oh, wait. Oh.
Expectant moms to be are already fraught with anxiety of hoping that their child's going to come out okay. And then when you tack in like, oh, well, you know, a fly got into the ointment a little bit here, and who knows what DNA from that is now milling about. It's just super effective and super gross.
I want it out of my body now. You should have seen him. There could be anything in here, in me, in my body.
I don't know if I can arrange it now, right now, tonight. Why do we have to run around in the dark like a
Because I don't want it in my body. Do you understand me? I don't want it in my body.
That idea of mad scientists and horror have been really friendly. Like they've been bedfellows for a long time, since probably like Frankenstein or before. But now you see Brundle and the idea of like biotech, pharmaceutical sciences, technology, and using it to like get to like a level of perfection. He wants to do all of this science to maybe take the human body to a better place, to make it more immune to diseases, always with the best of intentions, science without ethics. It's something that certainly in 1980s was just beginning to be discussed, with pharmaceuticals and biotech starting to come into play. And now we're still struggling with that stuff too. No different than, again, body autonomy, women's control over their body, abortion rights. Like there's so much there that in that movie, it feels like less subtext. Certainly now when you watch it under the guise of body horror and the grotesque that David Cronenberg has made such a name for himself.
What you just said makes Gina Davis's line even more, all the more powerful. She's shouting out, "I don't want this in my body," at a time when it wasn't just and unfortunately now a time that has returned, where you couldn't just be like, "I don't want this in my body, I'm going to do something." Like there were risks involved. And so to have the courage and the power to like say that and say it as forcefully as she does in that scene, like have to imagine that resonates a lot more back then. And again, unfortunately, it probably resonates more now too.
I think that's also Cronenberg making not so subtle critiques about Canada's abortion laws at the time.
You know, I did write it 20 years ago, but you could feel, I mean, even then you could sort of feel that this was coming, this kind of an oppressive ownership of and control. It's a constant in history that somewhere in the world there's some government that wants to control its population. And that means, once again, body is reality. What do you control? You control people's bodies. That includes speaking. That includes expressing yourself. That includes your brain. That's still your body. So, yes, I mean, in Canada, I have to say, and I've said this recently, we think everybody in the U.S. is completely insane. You know, we think the U.S. has gone completely bananas. And cannot believe that elected officials are saying the things that they're saying there. Not just about Roe versus Wade, but everything else.
All issues that still prevail today, which again, the reasons why we still talk about The Fly, and why in the similar category to The Crazies, another movie they mentioned in the article, there was the original directed by Romero, and then there's the 2010 version with Timothy Olyphant.
How long has he been playing a statue?
A couple hours now.
What is it?
Lay that gun down. Rory?
That's making the good people of Ogden Marsh go crazy. The Crazies, rated R.
For me, I always kind of put it in a group picture with like the resurgence of zombie films that happened in like the mid 2000s, talking about Romero, that Dawn of the Dead movie directed by Zack Snyder, and then certainly like Walking Dead, 28 Days Later, all of these films that reintroduced us to zombies. Maybe we're the Walking Dead. It's actually not the zombies there, and everything from mass consumerism to disease. The Crazies, the remake, addresses again government paranoia, outbreak horror, rural isolation, all of those fears that are all kind of shown in the containment in the small town. Do you remember seeing The Crazies? Is this one you saw in the theaters?
I did see it in the theater, and I may not have seen it since, and that's not because I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it did a great job. It was a really solid movie that kind of surprised me in a way, because I didn't go in with a ton of expectations. I don't know if I would say love. I secretly really enjoy the original.
They started something they can't stop. The Crazies.
We can make it. I know it.
A lethal terror snowballs into hell. The Crazies. Rated R.
My brother and I stumbled upon it one afternoon watching it, and I was just kind of intrigued. It was like a scene where like they're in the woods, and you've got like the government agents or like with the white hazmat suits running through the forest and stuff. And I just remember watching, I'm like, this movie went completely over my head because I was so young, but it stuck with me. In rewatching it, there's some just like incredibly heart-wrenching moments because the characters in the original, those characters, like you're really rooting for them to get out of the situation, and you understand that there's this disease or biological agent out there that's affecting people. An extra thing that I'll add to what the list that you mentioned is loss of identity, and something like with people that have dementia or Alzheimer's, like the one scene where the guy like has his wife or girlfriend, he's hiding her in like this structure, and he's like, you have to stay quiet, so I'll lead them away. And she's starting to show the signs, and he recognizes that, and there's no coming back from it. And it's just really this gut-wrenching scene and moment in a movie that it's always stuck with me. And so when I went to see the remake, I'm like, okay, well, let's see what happens here. I wasn't super familiar with Oliphant, but really enjoyed what they did with the remake. I thought that it captured the overall theme really well. Especially kind of bringing it into a modern age and a modern time.
Yeah, especially after, after 9/11, war fatigue, the Iraq war, bioterrorism. The Crazies is kind of responding to that too, the military response.
Moving into the set. Let's go. Keep moving, please.
What do you guys tell me what's going on?
Sorry, sir, you have to keep moving. Let's go.
The coldness of it, those suits dehumanizing.
Yeah, you don't see faces.
You just see the mask. And you have to think too, like at the time, some of those things represented the government after the almost inarguable FEMA failure after Hurricane Katrina. And there's something that's happening there. I think, again, the mistrust of the government. Well, the government's going to be able to help us. And then in the Crazies, you get the heavy-handed response where, oh no, we've got to get the flamethrowers out. They're not really there to help you. They're there to tourniquet, scorched earth. That's what they're there for. The 2010 Crazies remake kind of does that really well.
A report of a traffic explosion at a nearby truck fueling station. Operators asked for deaths in efforts to contain the blaze, and civilians are not being permitted.
There's other movies that they talk about. There's one more, and that's The Invisible Man, 1897. H.G. Wells story that was then adapted to the 1933 Universal Monsters film directed by James Whale. And then we get the 2020 The Invisible Man movie directed by Leah Whannell that stars Elizabeth Moss.
Adrian said that I could never leave him. Hurry, please. That wherever I went, he would find me. That he would walk right up to me, and I wouldn't be able to see him. Hello?
Okay.
He's sitting in that chair. I'm scared of losing my mind. He has figured out a way to be invisible.
We need each other, don't we? The Invisible Man in cinemas.
Certainly dealing with domestic violence, gaslighting, trauma, how we look at survivors, the Me Too movement, the believability. That's all, I think, more in the forefront. Because again, it was a movie that surprised me because I appreciated that they took something that feels quote unquote old, like the Universal Monsters, and brought them to the present day, especially when you have such a strong actress in Elizabeth Moss and be able to really display trauma. A good example that they brought up in the article,
especially early on when she's being terrorized, kind of sets you up for her eventual emancipation from the Invisible Man. I mean, again, like you can take it on so many different levels because the Invisible Man, getting emancipated from an abusive relationship, like the person may no longer be there, but like it still has an effect on you. So invisible from that standpoint, or invisible, like you said, like with the gaslighting.
Also too, like I forget that the guy was like supposed to be like a tech bro. There is the commentary on like wealth and having money, especially like in tech, and how like it could hide a lot of sins, let alone like male privilege.
Oh, he's successful. What a great catch. What a great guy. Like, the Invisible Man is the monster you don't see outside of, the public persona that everyone kind of falls for. Yeah. So again, like take it on whatever level you want. It's all there. And like this, like you said, like this one is not that subtle with it, but taking an old property like the original H.G. Wells novel and the original Universal horror movie, like I feel like this is a great template on how to modernize something, make it fresh, make it original.
The way to do it, in my humble opinion, is to strip away all the iconography, capes and fangs and coffins and crosses, and just look at the essence of, a sociopath that drinks blood and make it scary. Like when the original Dracula novel and indeed the original film was released, it was scary to those audiences, so make it scary for a modern audience. It's the symbol of them that's iconic, not the original character. I don't know many modern teenagers who would have read the original H.G. Wells novel, but they're aware of the Invisible Man because they grew up watching Hotel Transylvania, Adam Sandler voicing Dracula and stuff like this. It's part of the reason I think a lot of these iconic monster characters have become safe. It's because they're so ubiquitous. So that's part of the challenge with these characters, is how do you strip all that stuff away? My primary goal was, how do I make this character of the Invisible Man scary again to a modern audience? The best way for me to do that was to forget about all the iconography and everything that's been done with the character in the past, kind of wipe the slate clean and just start again with this character and the essence of the character and try and build a story around it.
Adrian is dead. He's not dead. He has figured out a way to be invisible.
Maybe it wasn't everyone's cup of tea because maybe some preconceived notions of what the Universal template should be or what a Universal monster movie should be, but I thoroughly enjoyed this one. I feel like the way that it's set up and the way that it kind of pays off at the end is just, it's well made, it's well acted.
How do I make this guy scary? And as I was figuring out the answer to that question, this idea of a woman escaping this abusive relationship and this ex-partner of hers stalking her, it started to fit. It seemed to be where the story wanted to go. As I was writing it, I started researching it because anything I write, I'll start researching, interviewing people, and so I interviewed some counselors at a domestic violence shelter in Los Angeles, and the more I talk to them, it starts informing the script. Every time I've written a screenplay, there'll be a point when I'm interviewing someone and some of that research ends up making the script stronger or more authentic. We've seen movies depicting physical abuse a lot, obviously, but I think psychological abuse and being manipulated by someone is maybe harder to photograph, and it's something that was interesting to me. I felt myself wanting to go in that direction more. Somebody who is losing their mind because of the way someone else was manipulating them. And it just fits with the idea of the Invisible Man. If you think about that character as a metaphor, like that, an unseen man that's in your space, and he can do anything he wants, he can mess with you in these ways, and you're defenseless. That just, I think it fit well with the idea of, this woman being gaslit and manipulated to the point of madness.
Like a lot of the movies that we've talked about here, there's some things that kind of keep creeping back into all of these, like these remakes. Some of them are very specific to the socio-political angle, like it may be one thing. Some of them tackle a couple of things, and sometimes they kind of keep cropping up. So there's a definite connection with The Invisible Man and The Fly, with the women's emancipation and Invasion of the Body Snatchers as well. Like there's a lot of cross-pollination through lines that go through a lot of these movies that you kind of keep picking up on, that horror seems to keep delving back into, and I would say, unfortunately, are things that have not been resolved even after decades of kind of being in the public consciousness, that these films need to still keep addressing them because it's still unfortunately relevant today.
You see, our fears seem to arise from the information we consume, but between increasingly polarized news broadcasters and the wacky old world of social media, people are scared of radically different things. In the 2022 Chapman University Survey of American Fears, nuclear war and economic collapse both ranked below the top fear, corrupt government officials, and it's safe to assume those surveyed were referring to contradictory people. Fear of terrorist attacks ranked, rather interestingly, right next to fear of government restrictions on firearms. Deep lakes and oceans and sharks sandwiched dying. Studies have shown that in the UK, young people are scared of their future, but also that older people are scared of younger people. And among all this politicised fear, the classic monsters are still invoked from different angles. A Michigan Republican labelled top Democrat women witches. The Atlantic called Boris Johnson's cohort zombie populists. Pockets of confused Americans believe that politicians drink the blood of children to preserve their youth. And the words illegal alien still get thrown thrown about in reference to immigration. We might be more scared than ever, but in today's global, digitised world, our fears are less shared, more eclectic, and sometimes entirely antithetical, and they're fed by our constant access to grimness. An experiment at McGill University in Canada showed that when exposed to news, we're more likely to seek out content that's depressing and frightening. We've got really good at consciously making ourselves scared and angry. It's the doom-scrolling Olympics, and everyone's playing. So, and you'll have to forgive this incredibly lame sentence, perhaps today's monster is fear itself, a faceless entity too multifarious to be embodied in a single wacky organism.
Every generation is different, but in some ways it's the same. Like, we all have certain horrors that are partial to that generation. For a lot of us now that have the ability to access more media, the horrors that we have around us just continue to grow because we are more aware of things. That's the double-edged sword. And there is something about horror movies that allows you to still just turn off the movie. You may not be able to turn off the horrors that are outside your neighborhood, in your town, the injustices that are happening around you, but you can turn off the movie and not have the invisible man run after you or have the thing take over your body and grow a bunch of spider legs. And you can actually stop that. You can turn off the movie. You can't control a lot of the other horrors that we deal with. And that's where, maybe horror movies are unique in being able to do that. And because of this article, good job of kind of using that as a springboard to highlight how remakes specifically are kind of able to bring that mirror, go back to that social political mirror to things that are happening.
Yeah. I thought it was, I appreciate you bringing the article to my attention. It's not super long, so anyone that wants to give it a read, just go to Nerdist and look up.
These horror remakes are vital social political mirrors of their time.
Yeah, just type in socio-political. I'm sure there's not going to be many other hits on Nerdist using socio-political. Definitely check it out if you'd like. And by all means, like if you've come away with anything or there's something that Bernie and I have missed or have not given enough thought or words to, hit us up at the Fan2Fan Podcast. We are always open to hearing other people's thoughts. That's one of the great reasons why we have fellow fans on here. We actually don't like the sound of our own voices all that much. And so when we can hear from someone else, all the better. So if you've got some thoughts on this, give us a shout and we would love to have you on and we can explore this topic and other topics further.
The credit where credit's due. Thanks to Ariel Fisher for writing such a good article that gave us something to talk about. So Ariel, wherever you are, thank you.